ते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पश्चात्प्रदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिविचार्य अष्टोत्तर डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिविचार्य अष्टोत्तर शिष्य डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत स्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोरधाम की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। मथुरा धाम की जय। मायापुर नदी धाम जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा मई जमुना मई की जय। तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories assembly devotees. All glories to the assembly devotees. All glories assembly devotees. Always Shigur and Gaurang.
Welcome everybody to Srimad Bhagavatam with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. It is Wednesday, August 20th in 2025. Today we're starting with Srimad Bhagavatam 4:21:10.
4:21:10. All right, let's see.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, I will begin with 4:21:10.
Okay, good.
Ko niv asya kirtim na shranoti abhijno yad vikramo chistam ashesha bupaha loka sapala upajivanti kamam adyapi tanme vada karma sudam. Translation. Prithu Maharaj was so great in his activities and magnanimous in his method of ruling that all the kings and demigods on the various planets still follow in his footsteps. Who is there who will not try to hear about his glorious activities? I wish to hear more and more about Prithu Maharaj because his activities are so pious and auspicious. Purport. Saint Vidura's purpose in hearing about Prithu Maharaj over and over again was to set an example for ordinary kings and executive heads who should all be inclined to hear repeatedly about Prithu Maharaj's activities in order to also be able to rule over their kingdoms or states very faithfully for the peace and prosperity of the people in general. Unfortunately, at the present moment, no one cares to hear about Prithu Maharaj or to follow in his footsteps. Therefore, no nation in the world is either happy or progressive in spiritual understanding, although that is the sole aim and objective of human life. Guru Maharaj and others, would you like to comment?
Okay. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtatadesha Pradini Vanshakolpatarubhyas Chakrapas Sindhu Pyevacha Gita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayādvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Konvasya Kirtim Nashranoti Abhigya. What intelligent person is there that would not be willing to hear about the glorious activities of King Prithu? In other words, if you're not willing to hear these topics, then you're a fool. That's what's stated here. Yad Vikrama Uchishtam Asheshabhupa. Vikrama, just to hear even slightly, or to hear again and again the glories of King Prithu is instructive. It's instructive. So the even the the kings and the Bhupalas, is that the word? Bhupa, the kings, and Pala, Lokapala, and Bhupa, the kings, and the controllers of the various planets, still follow in his footsteps. So it's instructive for them, it's instructive for us, and therefore we should hear again and again about King Prithu. Hare Krishna.
For our next text, Panchatattva Prabhu, are you available?
Sure. Hare Krishna. Maitreya Uvacha Ganga Yamunayor Nadyor Antara Kshetram Avasan Arabdhan Eva Bubuje Bogan Punya Jihasaya. The great saintly sage Maitreya told Vidura, "My dear Vidura, King Prithu lived in the tract of land between the two great rivers, Ganges and Yamuna. Because he was very opulent, it appeared that he was enjoying his destined fortune in order to diminish the results of his past pious activities." Purport. The terms pious and impious are applicable only in reference to the activities of an ordinary living being. But Maharaj Prithu was a directly empowered incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, he was not subject to the reactions of pious or impious activities. As we've already explained previously, when a living being is specifically empowered by the Supreme Lord to act for a particular purpose, he is called a Shaktiavesh avatar. Prithu Maharaj was not only a Shaktiavesh avatar, but also a great devotee. A devotee is not subjected to the reactions resulting from past deeds. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said, "Karmani nirdahati kintucha bhakti bhajam." For devotees, the results of past pious and impious activities are nullified by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words Arabdhan Eva mean as if achieved by past deeds. But in the case of Prithu Maharaj, there was no question of reaction to past deeds. And thus the word Eva is used here to indicate comparison to ordinary persons. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, "Avajananti mang mudha." This means that sometimes people misunderstand an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be an ordinary man. The Supreme Godhead, his incarnations, or his devotees may pose themselves as ordinary men, but they are never to be considered as such. Nor should an ordinary man, not supported by authorized statements of the Shastras and Acharyas, be accepted as an incarnation or devotee. By the evidence of Shastra, Sanatana Goswami detected Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be a direct incarnation of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although Lord Chaitanya never disclosed the fact. It is therefore generally recommended that the Acharya or Guru should not be accepted as an ordinary man. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutare Govindaya Jayādvaita Swami Namine. So, Srila Prabhupada's explaining that it appeared, as it's explained in the verse, it appeared that Prithu Maharaj was enjoying his destined fortune in order to diminish the results of his pious activities. But Prabhupada explains the verse in such a way we can understand that these were appearances only, that such a great devotee as Prithu Maharaj was not subject to the ordinary actions and reactions of karma. He is in a transcendental position. And Prabhupada quotes this beautiful verse from the Brahma Samhita in this passage, "Karmani nirdahati kintucha bhakti bhajam." Normally, people are enjoying or suffering the results of their past activities, kind of a chain reaction, one thing after another after another. It carries along with them from lifetime to lifetime. As as Jayādvaita Swami has pointed out, it doesn't stop at the border. We think of death as the ultimate border or boundary in our life. And once you get to that border, people think, oh, well, there's nothing after that. Who can say what's after that?
I wonder what's after that. It's the greatest mystery, but it's all clarified in the pages of Bhagavad Gita, and even more so in Srimad Bhagavatam, that we're living in a kind of continuum, and that things carry on, and the laws of karma, as complex and sometimes inscrutable as they may seem, are being applied to every living being, particularly in the human form of life, where we're in the position of both advancing ourselves and degrading ourselves. Hence, a very responsible position, having achieved the human form of life. And there are those among us who are in this extraordinary position, who are transcendentalists, sometimes not recognized as such, but who can be recognized in certain respects. Their complete indifference to material pleasures, their complete affection and attention to the service of the personality of Godhead, different symptoms of a devotee. And then Srila Prabhupada talks about the example of Lord Chaitanya is in making the point that an ordinary man should not be accepted as some sort of empowered spiritual personality without the recognition via authorized statements of Shastras and the Acharyas. So the evidence that Sanatana Goswami cited for understanding that Lord Chaitanya was a direct incarnation of Krishna was Shastra. Even though, as it's said here at the end of the purport, Lord Chaitanya never disclosed this. He wasn't going around saying, I'm the supreme personality of Godhead and you have to worship me. It was Sanatana Goswami saw through the eyes of Shastra Chakshush. And the final, actually, it's not exactly a warning, but it's an admonition that we should be very careful based upon this recommendation that the Acharya or Guru should not be accepted as an ordinary man. Especially in this day and age, it's an easy pitfall even for devotees sometimes to think of otherwise elevated spiritual personalities, including their spiritual master, as somehow or other ordinary. But Prabhupada again and again stressed this point. The spiritual master is not an ordinary man. He shouldn't be seen in this way. If he is, then one can become subject to many offenses and retard his progress in spiritual life. Hare Krishna. Guru Maharaj, would you like to say something in this verse?
Yeah. First, just to review, this is what happens with an ordinary human being. When he's enjoying, he's diminishing the results of his pious activities. There's a kind of pious credit, and while he's enjoying, the credit is being used up. And similarly, if one is suffering, then it's to be understood that it's due to his his balance of impious activities. That balance is being reduced by the suffering. That's the situation of an ordinary human being. But the Lord should not be seen as an ordinary human being, and his empowered representatives, Shaktivesh avatars, should not be seen as ordinary human beings. And as Panchatattva Prabhu said, the spiritual master should not be seen as an ordinary human being. Gurushu Naramati Narakisa Arche Vishnu Shiladir Gurushu Naramati Vaishnave Jati Buddhi. So, but we see that the spiritual master is Indian or American or European, that he's has these characteristics or those characteristics, that he's well educated, not well educated, handsome or not so handsome, whatever. One has to understand that these are superficial characteristics. We have to go to the deepest level to see that Krishna is representing himself here. The spiritual master is not just an ordinary human being with his likes and dislikes and so on. One has to go deeper to see that he's representing the personality of Godhead, Sakshata Tena Samasta Shastra, by carrying the message of the Lord, by taking responsibility for training others in Krishna consciousness and the Parampara system. He is acting on behalf of the Lord. And Prabhupada gives that example that the Viceroy may seem to be, well, he doesn't give it that way, but the Viceroy is acting as the representative of the king. So he should be respected on the same level as the king. Not that we say, hey, he doesn't sit on the throne in London, so how can we respect him like the king? One has to understand the principle. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has a comment, because Prabhupada emphasizes or takes this point that Prithu Maharaj only seemed to be reducing his credit of pious activities. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur views the matter from another perspective. The word matva, thinking in this way, should be added. Though the avatar of the Lord and the Lord's devotee do not have prarabdha karmas experienced in the present life, out of great humility arising from his great bhakti, he thought that he would expend his pious and impious karmas by experiencing happiness and distress in this life like a conditioned soul. So Chakravarti Thakur offers a different perspective on this point. Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada said, this is how we study Srimad Bhagavatam. We see all the different aspects of, we see various possibilities of meaning according to the view of the acharyas.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Here, Maitreya Prabhu is disclosing the location of Prithu Maharaj.
Yes.
Lived in the tract land between two great rivers, Ganga and Yamuna.
Yes.
So it seems like he was in India.
Yes, definitely. That's what the text tells us, that he wasn't ruling from the higher planets.
That's right.
He wasn't ruling from some other region, but he was ruling from India, North India, between the Ganga and Yamuna.
So we can imagine the good fortune of India.
Absolutely, and that will be discussed also in a subsequent verse, that the demigods themselves would descend for sacrifices like those performed by Prithu, and sometimes even we'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
We have something in the chat. Sham Sindhu Prabhu writes, Hare Krishna, why does it say, in quotes, it is generally recommended that the acharya or guru should not be accepted as an ordinary man? Why does Prabhupada say generally and recommended, I would expect this to be mandatory versus just recommended. Are there cases where the Acharya is treated as a normal person and it's acceptable / not offensive?
Yes. Well, you're quite right. Let me just take a look and see one thing. Let's see what Prabhupada literally said. Although I imagine it will be very much different. Yeah, that's what Prabhupada wrote. Just double checking that, making sure we don't have a textual issue. Recommended. This is Prabhupada's. Well, this is it. The Shastras are recommending, means you can do or not do. But this is just like Krishna says. Humbly, this is my opinion. This is my opinion. He could say, this is how it is. I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I'm declaring it. But sometimes he says, this is my opinion. So, of course, the devotee will understand his opinion is absolute, but he presents it that way. Here, seems like generally maybe not a very important word in the sentence. Sometimes Prabhupada would, all of us when we speak, we add words that are not essential to our meaning. So here, as an editor, I would think we could dispense with generally. Is generally recommended. I can't think of a counterexample where it's not recommended. Well, if I had to think of a counterexample, where the guru is, what is that? Karya ajanataha, where the guru loses all discrimination about what to do and what not to do, acts sinfully, and so on. Then we may think, oh, he's no longer acting according to the principles of Shastra. So he's not acting in the absolute position. Not that I have to think my guru is telling me to smoke marijuana. I should be smoking marijuana. Not like that. So that would be an exception to the general rule or the almost invariable rule in some extreme circumstance where the guru becomes, what's the word? Yes, becomes antagonistic to the Vaishnavas, Vaishnavo Padishtena Matrin. Then Pratyago Vidhiyate, then one should give up such a so-called spiritual master or fallen spiritual master in such an unfortunate circumstance. Reluctantly, one may have to do that. Otherwise, generally, which is to say, generally, he should never be seen as an ordinary human being. Should be seen as Krishna's representative. Recommended here, I think, can be taken in as I mentioned on that. Hare Krishna.
Pandit Prabhu, are you available to take over hosting as well as reading the next text?
Sure, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so next verse, text 12. Sarvatra Swalitadesha Saptadvipe Danda Druka Anyatra Brahmanan Kulad Anyatra Setu Gotra Taha. Maharaj Prithu was an unrivaled king, and possessed the scepter for ruling all the 7 islands on the surface of the globe. No one could disobey his irrevocable order, but the saintly persons, the Brahmana, and the descendants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Vaishnavas. Saptadvipa refers to the 7 great islands or continents on the surface of the globe: Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, South America, Australia, and Oceania. In the modern age, people are under the impression that during the Vedic period or the prehistoric ages, America and many other parts of the world had not been discovered, but that is not a fact. Prithu Maharaj ruled over the world many thousands of years before the so-called prehistoric age. And it is clearly mentioned here that in those days, not only were all the different parts of the world known, but they were ruled by one king, Maharaj Prithu. The country where Prithu Maharaj raised must have been India, because it is stated in the 11th verse of this chapter that he lived in the tract of land between the river Ganga and Jumna. This tract of land, which is called Brahmavrata, consists of what is known as the modern age as portion of Punjab and northern India. It is clear that the king of India once ruled all the world, and that their culture was Vedic. The word Ashalita indicates that orders by the king could not be disobeyed by anyone in the entire world. Such orders, however, were never issued to control saintly persons or the descendants of the Supreme Godhead, Vishnu. The Supreme Lord is known as Achyuta, and Lord Krishna is addressed as such by Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, Sinayor Abhayor Madhye Ratham Sapitam Mi Achyuta. Achyuta refers to one who does not fall, because he is never influenced by the modes of material nature. When a living entity falls down to the material world from his original position, he becomes Chuta, which means that he forgets his relationship with Achyuta. Actually, every living entity is a part and parcel of or a son of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When influenced by the modes of material nature, a living entity forgets his relationship and thinks in terms of different species of life. But when he again comes to his original consciousness, he does not observe such bodily distinction. This is indicated in Bhagavad Gita 5:18 by the words Pandita Samadarshinaha. Material designations create differentiations in terms of caste, color, creed, nationality, etc. Different gotras or family designations are distinctions in terms of the material body, but when one comes to Krishna consciousness, he immediately becomes one of the Achyuta Gotra, or descendants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus become transcendental to all the consideration of caste, creeds, color, and nationality. Prithu Maharaj had no control over the Brahmana scholar, which refers to the learned scholar in Vedic knowledge, nor over the Vaishnava, who are above the considerations of Vedic knowledge. It is therefore said, Arche Vishnu Shila Dhira, Gurus Nara Matira, Vaishnave Jati Buddhir, Vishnurva Vaishnavanam, Kalimale Matane, Pada Tirtha, Buddhi. Shri Vishnu Namani Mantre, Sakala Kalau He Sabda, Samanya Buddhira. Vishnu Sarveshware Tad Itara Sama Dhira Yashya Va Naraki Saha. The one who thinks the deity in the temple to be made of wood or stone, who thinks of the spiritual master in the description as an ordinary man, who thinks the Vaishnava in the Achyuta Putra to belong to a certain caste and creed, or who thinks of Sharanamrita or Ganga water as ordinary water, is taken to be residents of hell. It's in Padma Purana. From the facts presented in this verse, it appears that people in general should be controlled by king until they come to the platform of Vaishnava and Brahmana, who are not under the control of anyone. Brahman refers to one who knows Brahman, or the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. And a Vaishnava is one who serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gnana Salaka Chakshun Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaurakinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So my question was before that King Prithu lived between two great rivers, his answer here. There are 7 great islands all over this earthly planet. We all know, we can see that Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, Australia, and I don't understand Oceania. We'll ask Maharaj what is Oceania means.
Oceania is
what?
The regions like Micronesia, Polynesia.
Oh, okay, right.
Fiji.
Oceania.
Actually, Australia is usually included in Oceania.
Interesting.
Oceania.
I didn't know. Right. Very good. And here also they say that king can rule everybody, but except saintly person, Brahmana, descendants of Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Vaishnavas, because they have taken shelter of Achyuta, Lord Shri Krishna. And that's why they become fearless, and also nobody can touch them. They are above the law. One should say that, because they are not under the impression, under the control of material nature. Sattva guna, rajogun, tamogun, they are above that. All right, so let's see what else we have here. Yeah, all the devotees belong to Gotra belongs to Achyuta, Krishna. So it's called Achyuta Gotra. Yeah, people sometimes ask, what Gotra you're from? So if you don't know, he says Achyuta Gotra. We can answer that. Okay, Achyuta Gotra. And as it says in Padma Puran, it's very heavy actually. And people who thinks this deity in the temple made of wood or stone, spiritual master in disciple, an ordinary man, and who thinks Vaishnava in Achyuta Gotra will belong to a certain caste and creed, they taken to be residents of hell. So that's a very heavy statement. Because they are fools, that's why. And all the residents hell, they are all fools anyway. Okay, and what else we have? People in general should be controlled by king until they become platform of Vaishnava and Brahmanas. So yes, that's why Vaishnava and Brahmana and or descendants of Supreme Personality Godhead, that's Vaishnava, they are above the law because they cannot do anything wrong because they are Krishna conscious and they are above the three modes of nature. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Maharaj.
There's some, there's this interesting description of Saptadvipa as the corresponding to various places on earth. Saptadvipa means 7 islands. And so Prabhupada in this context speaks of these 7 islands as being these various islands, great islands or continents. Elsewhere in the 5th canto, you find that the 7 dweeps refer to large-scale features of the cosmos. There's Jambu Dweep, on which we're presently situated, and there are 6 other dweepas. There's surrounding Jambu Dweep is an ocean of salt water, then there's another island, then there's another ocean, then there's another island. In this way, there are 7 seas and 7 dweeps or islands. The Sariputta Prabhu, in his book Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy, has given some attention to this issue. He specifically cites Srila Prabhupada's statement here that there's a correspondence. Let me just find my spouse, my spot again. Yeah. So, let me just find it. Yeah. So Prabhupada here he identifies the Saptadvip with these different continents, and Sariputta cites 4 other examples of this sort of identification of large-scale cosmological features or higher planetary cosmic features with places on Earth. In the 5th canto, Bhoma Swarga, is sometimes accepted as a tract of land in Bharatvarsha known as Kashmir. So it's a higher region, but it's mapped to Earth. And elsewhere in 4th canto, it is said that Shiva Loka is supposed to be situated near the Himalayan mountains. And then in, again, 4th canto, 10th chapter, the Yakshas are identified as a Himalayan hill tribe, like the Tibetans, although they're supposed to be associated with the demigod Kubera. So Sariputta says, we suggest that identifications of this kind either refer directly to higher dimensional associations between earthly and celestial locations. There's some subtle way in a higher dimension where these 2 sets of locations are connected, or else they refer to traditions that have arisen because of ancient experience of the earth as a higher realm. Thus, Lord Shiva is always associated with the Himalayas, and in the Vedic literature, there are many stories about him that take place in a Himalayan setting. It is therefore natural to think of the Himalayas as the place of Lord Shiva, and he may indeed be especially accessible there to advanced yogis. Of course, we cannot simply regard Shiva Loka or Saptadvipa as places in the three-dimensional earthly realm of our ordinary experience. Then he quotes other related items like that as being from the Siddhanta Shiromani, describing a correspondence between the earth globe and Bhumandala. He says that can be expressed in mathematical form. The points on the plane of Bhumandala can be mapped onto the earth globe by a stereographic projection. This is a standard kind of map projection, which countries on the curved surface of the earth are represented on a flat plane. We all see that the earth is a globe, and yet we look at flat maps as representing the geography of the earth. So Sariputta, our mathematician, says that you can map, of course, you can map the Bhumandala, which is, again, large cosmological feature with 7 dweeps, 7 islands. You can map that onto the earth by a certain kind of projection, a stereographic projection. And then, let's see. And it gets complicated how he gets into the details of this. And he says the question is, what is the meaning of this mapping between Bhumandala and the earth globe? It is not possible for us to take it as a literal description of the earth. And since the continents in the southern hemisphere are not at all arranged in concentric rings, it may be that this mapping refers to actual higher dimensional connections between parts of this earth and parts of Bhumandala. This is suggested by the fact that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati refers to it, and Srila Prabhupada, following in disciplic succession, does also. And then there's a larger discussion, but I find it, first of all, notable that Sariputta doesn't just shrug his shoulders and say, well, it's just contradictory. He doesn't just write it off as Prabhupada not knowing what he's talking about. Or he doesn't just say, well, it's all perfect, and if you don't get it, you're a fool. But he takes the trouble to interrogate these questions. We see several places in Bhagavatam or elsewhere where celestial places or major cosmological features are spoken of as being present on the earth, or they're just the earthly places are spoken of as being the places referred to, although that doesn't completely work out, as Sariputta points out. So what do we do about this? And Sariputta suggests that there may be what he calls extra-dimensional connections. You could say subtle divine connections between these places, or that these descriptions have arisen because of from a past age when there was divine experience on earth of the actual presence of these places. Sadaputa brings up that there are correspondences we still speak of today, that the earthly Vrindavan corresponds to the transcendental Vrindavan, that the earthly Dwarka corresponds in some way to the celestial or transcendental Dwarka, that the Jamuna flowing through Uttar Pradesh corresponds to the same Jamuna that Krishna takes pleasure in the spiritual world. So these are all subject matters for thought. It would be unjust just merely to dismiss Sadaputa Prabhu's analysis as he's compromising, or he's trying to win over the scientists, or he's unfaithful. But this is what we're supposed to do: think about what we've read and ask ourselves, how does this work? And many times we may find that, well, we really don't know. Because how expansive is our intelligence? Sukadeva Goswami tells who is it? Parikshit Raj, that even if you had a lifetime of Brahma, you wouldn't be able to understand all this, the Vedic cosmology. But he's just giving some brief insight into the structure of the universe. But he frankly says to Parikshit Raj, you're not going to understand all this. I'm just giving a short rundown. We see a little model of a DNA chain, and we see that it's a double helix, that it has these connections between this element and that element, different acids. But that's a simple model. How actually are these acids bound to one another? How actually are they situated and acting? We don't have little plastic models inside of our cells. It's something more complex and subtle. So similarly, the Sukadeva Goswami says, I'm giving a summary, but even if you had a lifetime like Brahma's, you wouldn't be able to understand the depth to which it goes. So personally, I find it wonderful to see how Sadaputa Prabhu has examined these matters. And we see that this is what the Goswamis also do. When they see contradictions or apparent contradictions in Shastra, they don't just say, well, or just ignore them. But it becomes a topic of research and discussion, often turning up really delightful things in Krishna's pastimes. Nana Shastra Vicharana, the Goswamis ask themselves, why these contradictions? And they do research in different Puranas or Shastras, and then they offer their explanation. So this deepens our appreciation of Srimad Bhagavatam, and also perhaps our appreciation of how tiny our ability is to understand these things. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Radesh Prabhu, if you can read the chat box, please.
Yes, Guru. I think, did we cover Saraswati Mata's question about modern scientists?
Start from there.
Okay. Pranams Param Puja Maharaj and all the Vaishnavas. Modern scientists claim 200 million years ago there were no separate continents, but rather these continents formed one large landmass known as Pangaea. and only after this continental drift did we get these 7 continents. So how do we reconcile this theory with what we learn from the
Vedas? Yes. Well, I don't know how we would reconcile it. These are topics for our scientists to consider. Of course, we know that this is a theory, and yet there are reasons to give credence to the theory. Of course, what we learn from the Vedas, again, Sadaputa says it's not just a bare reference to places on earth, but there's some connection to higher realms. The example is there, Lord Shiva in the Himalayas. We know that there's a divine realm of Lord Shiva, more subtle or refined or distant from our vision, and the Himalayas. And presumably Google Maps Google can send up drones in every direction and fully map out the geography of the Himalayas. And I suspect they'd be unlikely to find Kubera, the Yakshas, Lord Shiva, and the other features of Shiva Loka mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. And yet Lord Shiva is depicted as living in the Himalayan regions. So again, Sadaputa says, well, it may be that there's a subtle connection between the earthly realm and the divine realm. Or it may be that there was a previous experience of these divine places or higher dimensional places existing on earth. You don't really know. But it's not to be lightly dismissed as insignificant.
Thank you much. We have a question from Praveen Krishna Prabhu asking, what does Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur say about the Saptadvipa?
He's silent about it in this purport. He doesn't discuss Saptadvipa. He discusses other issues, but not Saptadvipa.
And then we have 2 more comments, and then as we are reaching time, maybe I'll request that these be the last 2 before Kirtan. Murari Gupta Prabhu asks, Hare Krishna Maharaj, if the explanation of Vedic cosmology is not received by a Guru Parampara, how trustworthy is it? In no way do I mean to minimize the insights of Sadaputa Prabhu, whom I hold in the highest regard.
Well, Sadaputa doesn't claim, it has to be this, it has to be that, but he's offering ways to understand the statements of the Bhagavatam, the statements of Srila Prabhupada, in relation to our actual experience or the investigations done by modern science. We can simply leave these things aside and not discuss them, and then the problem goes away. Or we can take it of the work of a devotee who's explored these things and offered insights. You don't have to take it as canonical, as being on the level of Vedic authority or the Guru Parampara authority, but these are the thoughts of a intelligent and faithful devotee who's familiar, who studied it and is familiar in great depth with both the cosmology of Srimad Bhagavatam and the cosmology as put forth by modern science.
Thank you much. We have one final comment from Panchatattva Prabhu. This is a quote from Srimad Bhagavatam 1:15-12. It was by his influence only that in a fight I was able to astonish the personality of God, Lord Shiva, and his wife, the daughter of Mount Himalaya. Thus, Lord Shiva became pleased with me and awarded me his own weapon. Other demigods also delivered their respective weapons to me, and in addition, I was able to reach the heavenly planets in this present body, and was allowed a half-elevated seat. This also will be dealt with in the next verse, which we'll read next Monday, but talking about interplanetary associations. Guru Maharaj, do you have any final comment?
We can end here.
So I would like Venkatesh Prabhu. Hey Venkatesh, what is all that hat about? Where are you located?
And I also may drop off a little before the end of the call. We'll see.
Okay, Maharaj. Yes,
It's,
thank you. Venkatesh, go ahead.
Midnight here.
Your kirtan now today.
Okay.
Well, stay.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasadi Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashatya Vishatari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayādvaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauravinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishwat Paramahansa Shacharya Sadaswati Shri Vijayan Geshasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishwat Paramahansa Shacharya Sadaswati Shri Vijayan Geshasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Antakoti Vaishnavandi Ki Jai Namo Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaurabhakta Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Madhura Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Ganga Maya Namaya Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Gaur Bhakti Ki Jai All graces and melodies, all graces and melodies, all graces and melodies, all grace, all grace, all grace, Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Thank you, Venkatesh Prabhu, for your nice kirtan. I still want to know, you're still in Mayapur?
Yes.
Oh, that's why. It's early in the morning, cold. Wow.
Yeah, it's raining here, so it's still cold.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami Maharaj ki.
Jai.
Mm.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Maharaj,
Thank
being
you very much.
present with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.